Greetings, everybody. It's been a while since I uploaded a video, and I'm going to be busy for the next couple weeks, so I thought this would be a good time to upload something. Um, for those of you who don't know, some of you do, some of you don't, I work in the oil industry, and for the last year, oil industry has been very slow because prices have been very low, so I have not been working, and it hasn't been necessary for me to do so because while I was working, I made enough money to live comfortably for a couple years without having an income after that. So even though I haven't been working, I haven't needed to, I've been able to live comfortably, have the luxuries that I enjoy. Um, Based off of all the precious metals that I had stockpiled during the good years. And I was getting to the point where I thought it would be a good idea to start working again. And I got called by my former employer, and they said that they have stuff coming up. So next week, I'm actually going to drive out to Wyoming and start working in Wyoming for probably a month or two, maybe longer term, maybe not, remains to be seen. So if anyone lives between here, New Hampshire, and Wyoming, or out in the West, say anywhere in the Dakotas, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, maybe even Utah, um, I'm probably going to have some time to travel out there, which I look forward to doing. And if there's anyone out there who would like to meet or maybe talk, shoot me a message and maybe we can work something out. Be very provisional at this point, but I'm definitely going to Wyoming in a week, and I'll be there for probably 6 to 10 weeks, and I'll have probably a week or two of free time where I'll be able to travel. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Now that that's over, I probably won't be able to upload any videos while I'm there or record any videos while I'm there. So I thought this would be a good time to get this out. This is a topic that a couple people have asked me about. It's not a topic that I feel particularly strongly about, not one that I felt compelled to talk about, but because people asked, I thought I would, and that's Donald Trump. Uh, One reason I don't like talking about him, or I'm hesitant to talk about him, is that it's such a presidential election is such a large social event. It's so broad that it's very difficult to. There's so many aspects of it that you could look at. That no video I could make or anyone could make could address everything that goes into it. And I suppose that could really be said of anything. So maybe I'm being a little picky and saying, well, I don't want to talk about Trump because there's so much that goes into it that I couldn't explain it all. I guess that's true of anything, any topic we could discuss would have potentially more that could be gone into it than I could ever do in all the videos ever made. Um, but when you look at something like a presidential election, you have all these social forces and tendencies and trends and developments and that go into every aspect of it. Why did he win the primary? Why did he want to run? And why did he win the primary? And why do some people support him and some people hate him? And all these things. And and there's so many factors. You on one level you have people who it's just a team sport, and they're Democrats who hate him just because he's the Republican nominee, and no matter what he did or didn't say or did or didn't do, they would hate him for that reason. And then there are other things that are particular and peculiar to him. You know, it's a pretty strong tendency for both parties to couch the opposing party's candidate as in some way considerably worse than previous um, contenders. So whoever the nominee is worse than previous nominees. And I think part of that is that you know we always are told this, and so it has to be, well, no, Trump is much worse than Bush would have been, or much worse than uh, John McCain would have been, or much worse than Ronald Reagan would have been, and vice versa. Oh, no, no, Hillary Clinton's far more radical than Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or John Kerry or Hubert Humphreys or whoever else. So I mean, there's so many layers to it that it's hard for me to like pinpoint one that I'd like to talk about, and even the one that I might select might be difficult. The other thing is I'm not personally that super interested in it. Um, it was 3 or 4 years ago I made a video titled "Post Political," and that's not entirely true. I'm not completely disinterested in what happens in elections, not only is it in the sense that it can be interesting to watch and see what develops, but also, yeah, it has some effect on my life, and so it behooves me to pay some attention to it. But it's of all the things that interest me, of all the things that take my attention, it's somewhere pretty far down the list far enough that I'm not watching the news cycle 24/7. I'm picking up what I see at the gym, what I see on social media. Um, I retain friends who are both Trump supporters and Bernie supporters and Clinton supporters and hardcore Democrats and hardcore leftists and hardcore Republicans, and of course, a huge, disproportionate number of libertarians and anarcho-capitalists. Uh, and beyond that, I'm not going and studying any deeper than that. So one thing I do find interesting about Trump is some how he's appealing in ways that are a little bit unusual. Obviously, there's the appeal that he's the Republican nominee. There's plenty of people that's going to be the reason they vote for him. That's going to be the reason they support him. They will say or do whatever they feel will, advance that cause, regardless of who he is or what he's done. Um, there's also the anyone but Hillary. Now, that's something that I can definitely understand. If we're talking about contemporary American political landscape, I don't know that there's anybody who's actually worse than Hillary Clinton. There are people who are just as bad. And honestly, I think that Barack Obama is just as bad, but I will say this for him. Uh, he's very good at coming off as being, you know, more sincere and more I'm saying he comes off this way. I'm not saying that's how I think he actually is, but he's very good at public speaking in the sense where he can sound not deliver like a really rhetorically pure logical persuasive speech, but a speech that will aesthetically and emotionally appeal to people and come across as a sincere reformer. I don't believe that's what he is. That's how he is. And I also say that for Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is one of the best liars I've ever seen. He can make himself sound so reasonable, so caring, so responsible. So, uh, Hillary Clinton has a naked lust for power and has for many years to the point where even her supporters acknowledge and satirize it. If you look at like Saturday Night Live would lampoon her as that. I mean, years ago. Uh, and also she has such a clear disdain for plebs, for plebeians. You can just see this in so many of her interviews where she has to intermingle with people who are not an elite political class or elite, wealthy billionaires or millionaires and media people. That she is just the epitome of a social elite. And yes, so is Barack Obama, but he knows how to roll up his sleeves and act like he's, just a guy from Chicago, even though that is not correct. And in a sense, you could almost say, it's better that her true colors are more obvious than it is in some of these more savvy political silver-tongued politicians like Obama or Clinton. Um, or someone like well, I would say Ted Cruz is silver tongue, but his face and stuff, his persona is so crooked that like it overcomes the subtlety of his persuasive appeal. But I can definitely understand being drawn to Trump just because you hate Hillary, because I hate Hillary. I've hated Hillary. My political philosophy really honestly was instigated during the Clinton presidency, not by clearly herself alone, but by that administration, who she was an integral part of, even though she was merely the first lady. Uh, it was the siege of Waco, Texas, and the murder of the Branch Davidians, which kind of instigated. It was the genesis of my political thought, and the extension of federal power and federal tyranny during the Clinton years, which in retrospect, compared to what we got after 9/11, seemed very, very minor, but at the time was quite radical and threatening. You know, I can trace that to her. So, like personally, her her despotism, if that's what you can call it, and that's I think would be a fair thing to call it, is actually as a reaction is partially responsible for my own political ideology. I absolutely despise her, and actually, I would feel pleasure in her being defeated. I want to see them debate, and I want Donald Trump, whether he wins or not, or if it hurts him or not, I want to see him humiliate her in every possible way that imaginable, every way, and she deserves it. She has blood on her hands, and so in addition to the fact that he's going against Hillary, which a lot of people are going to appeal to, there's politically correct media hypocrisy regarding the two candidates. Now, that people have a natural reaction against if they're aware of it, if they're keyed into it. So, which is not to say that Donald Trump is a good candidate or is correct about anything, but the stuff that he gets in trouble for like a tweet or saying something that's he's saying something that's impolite or maybe racist or misogynist or goofy. A lot of my liberal friends will post videos of him doing mocking like retarded people, and you could say yes, that's very immature and stupid and doesn't speak well to his character, and let's just concede all that for the moment. He doesn't have blood dripping off of his hands. He isn't guilty of sanctioning drone strikes that kill people by the dozens, if not the hundreds. Uh, uh, of taking billions of dollars from the most socially backward and medieval societies like Saudi Arabia, like Hillary Clinton does. The woman who committed perjury, who is above the law but clearly guilty of crimes that would send almost anybody else, anyone even a slight rung below her in terms of political power, would be condemned to prison probably for decades, if not life. And yet, even though that's admitted and it makes it out there, the media doesn't harp on it. They don't treat her like the person that she is. They don't make a big deal out of. I was just reading the other day, what she gets for speaking fees is $700,000 to give a speech, and when you fill out the form to apply to ask her to come speak to you, she stipulates that she wants you to provide a private jet, and it has to be a C707 or some huge, not just a regular private jet, but a huge one or bigger. And no one's like, oh, look, this woman of the people has to travel in private jets that are gigantic, that have jacuzzis in them or whatever else. That she gets a pass on all of that. And if you are at all aware of that or you see that hypocrisy, it's very hard not to then come down on the side of the person. There's a very strong enemy of my enemy is my friend thing that can push people into his camp. And I can totally understand that. Is it really effective? Is it a good idea? Does that really make Trump a good candidate, or is he worth supporting on those regards? I don't think so, but I can definitely understand that. And to go back to the lesser of the two evils argument, you can make an argument actually for either of them. I think that it's possible to look at Hillary and be like, yes, she's terrible, but we know what we're getting more or less. We know what to expect from her. With Trump, we don't know what to expect from him really. He doesn't have a history, which I will say is good for him. He doesn't have, you know, pages and pages of like drenched in blood of his past exploits. You can say he declared bankruptcy and he, did pro wrestling shots and maybe he's a corrupt bad business person or he's a lousy boss and like all that may be true and speak ill of his character. None of that's as bad as you know uh, Hillary's role in both as first lady, then as senator, like voting for the Iraq War right there. Nothing Donald Trump has ever done is even, well, not just voting for it, but uh, arguing for it strenuously. And then her actions as Secretary of State. Oh, and by the way, giving away through her haughty negligence the national security secrets of the United States to all of our enemies, something that could plausibly considered treason, uh, is no big deal. Relative to a tweet. I mean, Donald Trump could call all Muslims sand niggers, and it wouldn't be as bad as probably 1,000 things that we could list that Hillary Clinton has done, demonstrably done, and yet the in terms of coverage, he's the one who has all the uh, he gets all the negative coverage, and she's this it's not blanket good. I don't want to make it sound like the media just gives her a complete free pass, but it's clearly biased in her favor. So I see why a lot of people would graft onto that. Now, uh, but you could make arguments either way, and I think trying to do like the math of which one on net is the more libertarian, or even if you don't care about libertarianism, the least bad or the best. It's impossible almost, especially when the rhetoric and the promises of politicians during the campaign season are non-binding. They can say whatever they want right now. Once they're in the position to govern, they can disregard or not, they can, nothing that they said before can be held to them at all. So, you know, maybe one of them says something that sounds good now. It doesn't mean that they'll do that. Maybe they say something that sounds bad. It doesn't mean that they'll do that. We just don't know. So that's a reason, I guess, to not support either. Um, Another thing about Trump, though, that I think a lot of people like, besides the fact that he's just not a politician, is that, well, that's a big thing, that he's not a politician, that he's come outside the political machine. If she's the epitome of a political machine, he's not. I mean, he's dabbled in politics before. He's something of a celebrity, again, whatever you want to say about his business practices, but he's definitely not an elected official. He hasn't been a career politician. That's appealing to a lot of people. Also, his I don't want to see total, but the extent to which he has disregarded political correctness. I think he could have gone farther in this. I don't think he's so far out there as some people think. A lot of people on the left think he's just way out there, and I don't think that's the case, because they're overblowing a lot of what he says. But it's refreshing to have somebody who doesn't feel their hands are tied to discuss things openly, even if he's discussing them in a silly way or a stupid way or a non-convincing way. The fact that he's willing to talk about some things in a way that others are not is refreshing to a lot of people, including to me. Even if, again, I don't necessarily agree with what he's saying, uh, it's nice for once to have someone who can get on a national stage and say that. And I'm hopeful, and I don't say this with any reason to hope for it, but it would be great if during the debates we got a lot of that. And I don't even care if he had a disastrous campaign after, if he could lambast her and her party and their ideology, a great deal, that's fine. So then another thing is, a lot of the attacks against him are, I think, so overblown. And this is not specific to him. This is every campaign cycle, and all partisan dialogue kind of boils down to this level. Uh, like he's it's so overblown that it's hard not to be like, oh, come on. For him to say uh, there should be a ban on Muslim immigration, and I don't agree with that, but like, for him to say that isn't necessarily racist or whatever. Um, and just the hyperbole on the screechy, self-righteous talk on the Democratic side is bound to get people to say, if they're going so overboard, he must be onto something, right? If, again, the enemy of the enemy is my friend. Um, the other thing is, he does have beyond just the not being a Democrat, not being Hillary Clinton. Uh, and this is not just him. Like, the Republicans in general are kind of appealing to this, but he does have that latent nationalism that he can appeal to. He wants to make America awesome. He wants to make America great. He wants the military to be strong. Go us. His willingness to be politically incorrect and more overt in his condemnation of, say, Muslims or radical Islam or even immigration. Again, many points of which I don't agree with, or maybe wouldn't say in that way, or agree in as much. It definitely does appeal to the national sentiments of a lot of people. The us versus them, good guys, bad guys. And that has a very visceral appeal to a lot of people, including many libertarians. And I'm sure this is not news to anyone who's watching this channel. You know, there's a lot of people who have, it's not even, I won't even say that they don't realize it, because many of them now are even explicitly saying, they are nationalists, or even if they don't admit it, many of them have that inclination. And I have to admit, I have some of those inclinations myself, uh, and he definitely appeals to that. uh, Now, I don't know how much of that is specific to him, but his willingness to not be politically correct in the condemnation of, the supposed enemies, uh, is definitely going to draw people who like to hear that. If you want to rah rah my team, you don't want to hear someone saying, "Oh, let's all get along. we don't really have an enemy. It's an ideology, not it's not a religion or whatever. That's not going to get you fired up the same as they're bad, I'm going to kick their ass. And again, I don't see that's a rhetorical thing. Like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton can talk in a very conciliatory, politically correct way. At the end of the day, they're still sending off missiles and soldiers and bombs on a daily basis, fighting and killing this enemy. And maybe you want to say that they're not doing it well enough or as much as you'd like, but you can't say that they're just sitting back and allowing stuff to happen. They're doing stuff, unfortunately, and Trump, but rhetorically they don't talk that way. They speak softly and carry a big stick, but some people like carrying just speaking loudly and carrying a big stick, or as the Republicans would say, an even bigger stick. And so that definitely has an appeal to a lot of people. And I don't. This isn't a good video here to go into the whole what's the deal with all the right-leaning nationalist libertarians or former libertarians who are now right-wingers or whatever, alt-right, dark enlightenment, all that. That's another big topic, one that's kind of creeping in everywhere, into Reddit, into my comment section. In fact, I have no doubt this comment section to this video will likely go there pretty quick, and that's its own thing. But without analyzing it, that's going to be, at least for libertarians anyway, where a lot of the support for Trump is going to be. On the one hand, the people like the Walter Blocks who are just making a cost-benefit analysis. Again, how you do the math for that, totally, I don't think you can have any confidence in your calculation. But just assume if you did, yeah, you could say, oh, this one's better, this one's worse. I can understand that, even if I don't agree. Um, the other issue, the latent nationalism, the tribalism, the collectivism that is present with a lot of libertarians uh, is definitely something that he can feed into. So there's also within the American psyche, not just the libertarian one, there's sort of this idea of the self-made man uh, who rises up and achieves great things. And how much of that is even true of Donald Trump? Is he really self-made? I think he inherited a lot of money, and we can analyze it. But he certainly comes across that way. That's the persona he projects. That's the persona people like. Whether it's true in his business or not, the fact that he kind of walked into the Republican primary and just kind of clobbered all these establishment people, at least in that sense, it's true that he is kind of self-made, at least in that with regard, and it's hard not to have some begrudging respect for that. I think that a lot of the critiques about him undersell how intelligent he is. There's no way this guy's an idiot. People say, look at this thing he said is dumb. Yeah, politicians say things for public consumption. They'll say whatever they think will get them elected, will get them support, will get them to the next primary, which whatever. And if they say something that you think is dumb, it doesn't mean necessarily that they believe that and that they are themselves dumb. I think he's very sophisticated. I think he realizes that the way that he talks, the way that he speaks, his delivery, it has a mass appeal that's catapulted him to the nomination, and may catapult him to the White House. I'm not laying odds on that, but it could happen. It's definitely within the realm of possibility. Um, and for those who just dismiss the way that he speaks because it doesn't have that Brahmin sophistication that I guess that they think politicians are supposed to have. It's very populist, and being populist can win you elections even when you're not a populist. The Whigs did it way back. Uh, you know, uh, the most uh, patrician party can wear the clothes of the plebs and talk in a jocular, friendly, uh, you know, friendly way and get elected and be appealing to people. And Trump is doing that now. So I think that's intentional, and I think he has years and years of media experience on television, so he's honed his skills at doing this. I've heard that he's the only candidate who isn't using a teleprompter, so I think he's clearly intelligent. And again, not to endorse him or say that would make him a good president, or that I'm persuaded to support him or anything like that, but he is intelligent, and so when you hear people say, "Oh, he's an idiot," or "Look at these dumb things he said," I think that they're missing the point. Um, and the the Democrats say things that are completely asinine in terms of policy all the time, but if they just deliver them in a sophisticated way, people think it's intelligent. And like that's hardly any less foolish. So yeah, I think there's probably a whole host of other reasons why he's popular that aren't even related to who he is. It's just where our society is at this point. The he's in a lot of ways he's kind of a foil to like the Black Lives Matter um, protests. These hyper politically correct, uh, violent hypocrites are causing a reaction of people who are like, no, I'm not going to. I don't care if you call me racist. I don't care. You're being, you know, some kind of anti-American instigator, and he's able to feed off of that and to uh, garner support from all those who look at what happens and with Black Lives Matter and get reviled from it. Um, so I think there's more that I could probably list, and a lot more that I not even realized to put in here. So like I make no claim that this is comprehensive, but several people did ask me about it. I will say, if it bothers you, that's fine. It bothers the whole office of presidency bothers me. Um, Trump is definitely a demagogue, and that doesn't make him any worse than any of the other demagogues that we've had as president, which is probably almost all of them, maybe. And uh, I'm certainly not. I don't want to say I'm resigned. I'm not. I, I don't. I'm not going to get worked up about it. And if you're, this is what I told my friend because he was getting one of my subscribers got kind of upset, and he was like, "Oh, there's so many Trump supporters," and I'm like, "Well, what are you going to do? I mean, you can try and persuade people if you want, but that just tends not to work. I would focus on your own life. I'd do things that you find are interesting. I'd better yourself. I'd be somebody that people respect and who listen to, and you might persuade some people then. I don't think you're going to. This is something you can change by going onto Reddit and commenting all the time. Almost as a joke, I considered saying, why don't you go on Reddit and uh, reply to every single Trump supporter until you convince all of them not to be Trump supporters. And it's kind of rhetorically a joke because you could do that and you would do that forever and never change anyone's mind. It's just not worth the effort. There's so much more that's going into this, and some of it's understandable. Yes, the president has an enormous destructive potential, and so in a sense, it does matter who has that power. Uh, is it going to make a big difference whether it's him or Hillary? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. And then of course there's the whole thing with who's going to be on the Supreme Court, all that stuff. I think my own leanings is since I hate Hillary so much, I would be happy to see her be crushed, and so that's fine. I'm not going to fucking give him money or support him or say anything good about him other than I probably hate him a lot less than I hate her. And that's, if anything, just a function of her time in government. Whatever sleazy things that could be said about him, and there's probably many, they're just not going to include that many homicides. So, uh, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I look forward to all the you know, uh, right wingers coming on here and talking. And I don't mean that really in a derisive way. That's fine. That's an interesting development that's been happening. And anyway, and also, yeah, anyone who's anywhere out west, let me know, and maybe there's a chance we could meet up. I like meeting subscribers when I get the chance. It's always cool. I like to travel, so it'll be good to be going back to work. I wish it was a little bit more in the summer. I'm not looking forward to when winter hits, whenever that happens to be at that altitude. Um, but anyway, that's it, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye bye.